She hadn't slept in 36 hours, and her baby hadn't eaten in 14. The apartment was too quiet except for the soft, broken whimpers coming from the crib by the window, the kind of quiet that made every second feel heavier, louder, unbearable. Lily Harper stood barefoot on the cold linoleum floor, her oversized t-shirt wrinkled, her hair tied up in a loose, falling knot, staring at the nearly empty can of baby formula sitting on the counter like it was something that had betrayed her. She picked it up, shook it once, twice. Nothing, not even enough for half a bottle. Her chest tightened as her baby let out another small cry, weaker this time. And that scared her more than anything, because cries were strength, silence was not. She swallowed hard and glanced at her phone on the cracked kitchen table, the screen flickering faintly every time she touched it. Her bank app still open from 10 minutes ago. Balance, $2.17. She let out a breath that trembled on the way out, then wiped her face quickly like she didn't have time to fall apart, because she didn't. Not today, not when her child needed her. She grabbed the phone, her fingers hovering over her contacts, scrolling past names that had already said no, or worse, stopped answering entirely. Her thumb paused over one number she didn't even recognize clearly anymore. A saved contact from months ago, maybe from a job application, maybe from someone who said, "Reach out if you need anything." She couldn't even remember, and it didn't matter anymore. Desperation didn't care about details, it only cared about now. Lily inhaled sharply and started typing, her thumbs shaking just enough to slow her down. "Hi. I'm so sorry to ask this, but could you possibly send me $30 for baby formula? I'll pay you back, I promise." She stared at the message for a long second, her heart pounding so loud it felt like it echoed in the small apartment. This was it, the line she never thought she'd cross, asking a near stranger for money. But her baby let out another soft cry, and that was enough. She hit send before she could change her mind. The message whooshed away into the unknown, and immediately regret followed right behind it, her stomach twisting as she realized she didn't even know who she had just texted. She lowered the phone slowly, almost afraid to look at it again, like it might confirm something she wasn't ready to face. Outside, a car passed by, headlights briefly washing the room in pale light before disappearing again, leaving her back in the dim, quiet stillness. She walked over to the crib and gently placed her hand on her baby's chest, feeling the small, steady rise and fall. "I've got you," she whispered. Even if she didn't know how yet, even if everything felt like it was slipping, because somehow, some way, she had to believe that message, that one desperate, accidental message, had just changed something she couldn't see yet. Across the city, several miles away where the skyline cut clean against the early morning light, Ethan Cole stood barefoot on polished marble floors, a glass wall stretching from floor to ceiling behind him. The city still waking beneath his penthouse. His phone buzzed once against the kitchen island, a soft vibration that barely registered in the quiet. He did not rush to it. Messages came constantly, most of them predictable. Business updates, meeting confirmations, requests wrapped in polished language. He picked it up only when it buzzed a second time. More out of habit than curiosity, his eyes scanned the screen quickly, expecting another routine interruption, but instead, he froze, not dramatically, not obviously, just a slight pause, a subtle shift in the rhythm of his breathing as he read the words again, slower this time. "Hi. I am so sorry to ask this, but could you possibly send me $30 for baby formula? I will pay you back, I promise." He frowned slightly, his thumb hovering over the screen. His first instinct was immediate and familiar. Ignore it, block the number, move on. Because this was how it always started, vague apologies, small amounts of money, urgency wrapped in politeness. But something about this felt different. He could not explain it right away. There was no dramatic detail, no long story, no manipulation, just a simple request. Almost too simple. He tapped the number. Unfamiliar. No saved name. No connection. He could trace, which only reinforced the idea that this was nothing more than a random message sent to the wrong person, or worse, a calculated attempt. He set the phone down for a moment, exhaling slowly as he reached for his coffee. But even as he took a sip, his mind stayed on the message, the way the sentence trailed, the hesitation in the words, the absence of pressure. People who lied usually tried harder than that. They added details, they pushed, they convinced, This message did none of that. It simply asked. He picked up the phone again, reading it one more time, then glanced toward the city below. Thousands of lives moving, thousands of problems he would never see. And yet somehow, one quiet message had found its way into his morning. His thumb hovered over the screen again. 3 choices forming clearly in his mind. Ignore it and nothing changes. Block it and forget it ever happened. Or respond. Step into something unknown for no reason other than a feeling he could not justify. He let out a quiet breath, almost amused at himself for even considering it. This was not how he operated, not in business, not in life. Everything had structure, logic, intention. But this had none of those things, and still, he found himself typing, slowly, deliberately. Are you okay? He stared at the message before sending it, aware that this one small decision, something so insignificant on the surface, was already shifting the direction of his day in a way he had not planned. Then he pressed send, and just like that, the distance between a struggling mother in a dim apartment and a billionaire in a glass tower became smaller than either of them could possibly understand. Lily did not see the reply right away because she had set the phone face down on the table as if distance could soften whatever came next. She stood by the crib counting the seconds between each small sound her baby made, whispering quiet reassurances she was not sure she believed, and for a moment the world narrowed to that single fragile rhythm. Breathe in, breathe out. Please keep going. Please stay calm. Until finally she forced herself to turn back toward the table, her steps slow, hesitant, as if the phone itself held judgment. When she picked it up, her fingers trembled just enough to make unlocking the screen take 2 tries. And then she saw it. A message, not a rejection, not silence, but words, simple and unexpected. Are you okay? She blinked at the screen, her mind struggling to process it, because that was not what she had prepared herself for. People did not usually ask that, not strangers, not after a message like hers. She swallowed hard and read it again, the words. Somehow gentler the second time. Something in her chest loosened just slightly. Not relief, not yet, but something close enough to feel dangerous, because hope had a way of making things hurt more when it disappeared. She hesitated, her thumb hovering as the familiar voice of doubt crept in. What if this was a mistake? What if he was mocking her? What if he asked questions she could not answer? But then her baby let out a soft, tired whimper, and that was enough to silence everything else. She began typing, slower this time, choosing each word carefully as if honesty itself might scare him away. I am trying to be. My baby has not eaten since last night. I ran out of formula, and I do not get paid until Friday. I know this is strange. I am really sorry. She paused, staring at the message, wondering if she had said too much or not enough, then pressed send before she could delete it, her heart immediately racing again as she set the phone down, but did not step away this time. She stayed there, watching it like it might move on its own, seconds stretching into something longer, heavier, until the screen lit up again, her breath catching as she grabbed it too quickly, almost dropping it in the process. Another message. No hesitation, no questions, just one line. What is your payment app? She froze completely, her mind going blank for a second as disbelief replaced fear. She had expected doubt, maybe silence, maybe even judgment, but not this, never this. Her fingers moved automatically, typing out her account details, double-checking them twice before sending, her chest tightening with something she did not recognize at first. It was not just desperation anymore, it was the fragile beginning of trust, and that scared her even more, because trust meant this mattered now. This was real. She barely had time to set the phone down again before it buzzed once more, and this time when she looked, the number on the screen did not make sense at first, her eyes scanning it twice, 3 times, until it settled in. $100, not 30, not what she had asked for. More, far more than she had hoped for. Her breath left her in a shaky exhale as she pressed a hand against her mouth, tears rising before she could stop them. Not loud, not dramatic, just quiet, steady relief slipping through cracks she had been holding together for too long. She looked toward the crib, her voice breaking into a whisper. It is okay, it is okay. And for the first time in hours, maybe longer, she believed it just enough to move, grabbing her jacket, her phone, and the empty formula can. Because somewhere across the city, A stranger had answered a message that was never meant for him, and somehow, that was the reason her baby would eat today. The automatic doors slid open with a soft mechanical hum as Lily stepped into the convenience store. The bright fluorescent lights, almost too harsh after the dim quiet of her apartment. She tightened her hold on the baby carrier against her chest, instinctively shielding her child from the sudden brightness. Her eyes moved quickly across the shelves, scanning, searching, until they landed on the formula aisle. Rows of neatly stacked cans lined up like something she used to take for granted. She walked toward them slowly, almost cautiously, as if they might disappear if she moved too fast. Her fingers reached out and touched one of the cans, the same brand she always bought, the same one she had been shaking just an hour ago, hoping for something that was not there. She picked it up, reading the label even though she already knew every word, every instruction, every measurement by heart. Her chest rose and fell a little easier now, not fully calm, but no longer on the edge of breaking. She placed 2 cans into her basket, then hesitated, glancing down at her phone as if confirming again that the money was real, still there, not a mistake. Then quietly added a 3rd can, just in case, just to breathe a little easier tomorrow. At the checkout counter, the cashier scanned the items one by one, the familiar beep sounding almost louder than usual. Lily watched the total appear on the screen, a number that would have stopped her in her tracks just hours ago. But now she simply nodded, inserted her card, and waited for the approval message. When it came, she exhaled slowly, a release that seemed to come from somewhere deep inside her. She gathered the bags carefully, adjusting them so they would not press against the baby carrier, and stepped back out into the cool morning air, the sky now brighter, the city fully awake. But everything felt slightly different, softer somehow, as if the weight she had been carrying had shifted just enough to let her stand a little straighter. She walked a few steps before stopping, pulling out her phone again, staring at the message thread, the stranger who had sent more than she asked for, more than she could explain. Her thumbs hovered over the screen as she searched for the right words, something that could hold the gratitude she felt without sounding too much, without sounding like she expected anything more. Finally she typed, "I got the formula. Thank you. You have no idea what this means to me." She read it twice, then added, "I will pay you back as soon as I can." Before pressing send, she slipped the phone back into her pocket, not expecting a reply right away, not expecting anything at all, because in her world, kindness usually came with limits, conditions, or an ending. But as she walked home, the small weight of the grocery bag in one hand and the steady warmth of her baby against her chest in the other, she felt something unfamiliar settle quietly inside her. Not just relief, not just survival, but the beginning of something she had not allowed herself to feel in a long time. The possibility that maybe, just maybe, not every message sent into the dark disappeared without an answer. Back in the apartment, the quiet had changed. It was no longer heavy or suffocating. It carried a softer rhythm now, one that moved with the gentle sounds of her baby finally feeding. Lily sat on the edge of the worn couch, her shoulders slightly slumped, not from defeat this time, but from the kind of exhaustion that follows relief. Her eyes stayed on the small face in her arms, watching every tiny movement as if memorizing it. The way her baby's fingers curled, the way the tension slowly left her body with each sip. Lily let out a breath she did not realize she had been holding for hours, maybe longer, and leaned her head back against the wall. Closing her eyes for just a second, just enough to feel the moment settle, her phone buzzed lightly beside her, breaking the stillness. She opened her eyes and reached for it without urgency, expecting nothing more than a notification or delay. But when she looked at the screen, she saw his reply, simple, direct. "You do not have to pay me back." Her brows pulled together slightly as she read it again. Something about those words made her sit up straighter, not out of offense, but because it felt too easy, too generous. And in her world, nothing came without a reason. Her fingers hovered over the screen as that familiar caution returned. She typed slowly, "I appreciate that, but I would rather repay you. I do not want to take advantage of your kindness." She paused, rereading her message, making sure it sounded like her, like someone who still had something to hold on to. Then pressed send. Across the city, Ethan stood near the window again, his phone in his hand, watching the typing bubble appear and disappear before her message finally came through. He read it once, then again, a faint, almost imperceptible smile touching the corner of his lips, not because of the words themselves, but because of what they revealed. She did not ask for more. She did not try to extend the conversation. She simply drew a line, a boundary, something most people abandon the moment help appeared. He exhaled quietly and walked toward the kitchen, setting his phone down for a moment before picking it up again, this time with more intention, his thumbs moving slower, more thoughtful. Then pay me back by taking care of your baby, he typed, stopping for a second before adding, that is more important than anything else right now. He hesitated just briefly before sending it, aware that he was stepping further into something he had not planned, something that had nothing to do with contracts or strategy, just a choice. When the message reached Lily, she stared at it in silence, her eyes softening as she read it again, the words settling deeper than she expected. It was not just permission to accept help. It was a kind of understanding she had not been offered in a long time. Her grip on the phone loosened slightly as she looked down at her baby, now calm, now safe. And for the first time since everything had started to fall apart, she felt seen, not judged, not pitted, just seen. She typed a short reply, thank you, really, and set the phone down beside her. But this time she did not turn it face down. She left it there, screen up, within reach, as if some part of her, quiet and cautious, was no longer trying to push the world away, but instead, slowly, carefully, letting something in. The rest of the day did not magically become easier, but it became manageable, and for Lily, that difference meant everything. The apartment still felt small, the bills still sat unpaid on the corner of the table, and her future was still uncertain, but there was no longer that sharp edge of panic cutting through every thought. She moved slower now, more present, rinsing out bottles at the sink, carefully measuring scoops of formula like it was something precious, something earned, each small action grounding her in a way she had not felt in weeks. Her baby slept longer this time, full and warm, tiny breaths steady and soft, and Lily found herself just watching, sitting there with her phone resting loosely in her hand, her thumb brushing lightly over the screen without opening it, as if she was aware of it in a new way, not as a source of stress or bad news, but as something that had unexpectedly changed her day. Across the city, Ethan's morning had resumed its usual pace, calls lined up, emails waiting, meetings that demanded his attention, his assistant's voice moving through schedules and deadlines. But even as he responded, even as he nodded and made decisions, with practiced ease, a small part of his focus remained elsewhere, not distracted, just aware, the kind of awareness that comes when something unfamiliar lingers just beneath the surface. His phone buzzed occasionally throughout the morning, but none of those notifications carried the same quiet weight as the earlier ones. During a brief pause between meetings, he picked it up again, scrolling back to the message thread without thinking too much about why, reading the last line she sent. Thank you, really, simple, final, no expectation attached to it. He leaned back slightly in his chair, exhaling through his nose as he stared at the screen. This should have been the end of it, a small moment of kindness, resolved and complete. But something about it felt unfinished, not in a dramatic way, just a subtle sense that the connection had not fully closed. His thumb hovered over the screen again. The same hesitation from earlier returning, but softer now, less guarded. He typed slowly, then stopped, erased it, then tried again. Did you get enough formula? He read it once, almost questioning why he was asking, then pressed send before overthinking it further. Back in the apartment, Lily felt the vibration in her hand before she even realized she had been holding her phone again. She looked down, surprised to see another message, her heart giving a small, unexpected shift, not fear this time, but something closer to curiosity. She opened it and read the words, her brows lifting slightly. Because he had followed up, he had remembered. Her fingers moved more easily now as she typed back. Yes, I got enough for a few days. Thank you again, she hesitated, then added. My baby is okay now. She stared at the message for a moment before sending it, aware that she was sharing more than necessary, but it felt right somehow. Honest. When Ethan read her reply, his shoulders relaxed just slightly, a quiet confirmation settling in. The choice he made that morning had done what it was supposed to do. It helped. And yet, instead of closing the moment, it opened something else, something quieter, something neither of them had expected, two lives that should have remained separate now connected by something as small and as significant as a single message, and neither of them, not yet, fully understood where that would lead. That night, the apartment felt different in a way Lily could not quite explain, not bigger, not warmer, but steadier, like something invisible had shifted just enough to let her breathe without counting every second. She sat by the small window with her baby resting against her chest, the city lights outside flickering softly through the thin curtains. Her phone lay beside her on the couch, screen dark, silent, and yet her attention kept drifting back to it, not out of fear this time, but anticipation she did not fully trust yet. She told herself it was nothing, just a stranger who had helped once, just a moment that would pass like everything else. But when the phone finally lit up again, her heart reacted before her mind could catch up. A small, quick beat that made her reach for it almost immediately. The message was simple, almost casual. "What is your baby's name?" She stared at the words for a moment, her fingers pausing as something softer moved through her chest. The question was not about money, not about the situation. It was about her child, about something real, something personal. She looked down at the tiny face resting against her, the gentle rise and fall, the warmth, and without overthinking it, she typed, "Her name is Ava." She hesitated, then added, "She is 3 months old." Before sending it, her thumb lingering on the screen just a second longer than necessary. Across the city, Ethan stood in the quiet of his penthouse again, his tie loosened slightly, the day behind him but not fully gone. He read her message slowly, letting the name settle. Ava. He repeated it once in his mind. The simplicity of it, the weight of it. He had not expected the name to matter, but it did, more than he thought it would. He typed back, "Ava is a beautiful name," then paused, something unfamiliar nudging him forward. Is she sleeping better now? He sent it without rewriting this time, without second-guessing the intention behind it. Back in the apartment, Lily read his reply with a quiet smile that surprised her, small but real, the kind that came without effort. She shifted slightly, careful not to wake Ava, and typed, "Yes, she is finally calm." Then after a moment, "Thank you for asking." The conversation should have ended there, simple, complete, but it did not. The silence between messages no longer felt like distance, it felt like space, like something waiting, neither of them rushing, neither of them forcing it. Just two people on opposite sides of the city, connected by a thread neither had planned. As the night stretched on, their messages came slower, lighter, questions about small things, answers that did not try too hard. Lily found herself sharing little details she had not spoken out loud in days. The way Ava smiled in her sleep, the way mornings felt harder than nights, and Ethan, without realizing it at first, responded in a way he rarely did, not as a businessman, not as someone calculating outcomes, but as someone simply present, listening, replying, staying, and somewhere between those quiet exchanges, something began to take shape, not loud, not obvious, but steady, like the beginning of a connection neither of them had been looking for, yet neither of them were willing to walk away from. Morning came slower than usual, not because the sun was late, but because Lily did not rush to meet it with the same quiet dread she had grown used to. The small apartment still held its imperfections, the faint hum of the old refrigerator, the stack of unpaid bills waiting on the table, the thin curtain barely holding back the early light. But something inside her had shifted just enough to make the space feel less like a trap and more like a place she could stand in without bracing herself. Ava stirred softly in her crib, small hands stretching, a faint sound escaping her lips that was closer to a content sigh than a cry, and Lily noticed it immediately. The difference, the subtle change that told her everything she needed to know. She walked over and gently lifted her, holding her close as she whispered softly, "Good morning, baby." Her voice lighter now, not forced, just real. Her phone buzzed again on the table. And this time she did not hesitate. She reached for it with a quiet sense of expectation she was no longer trying to deny. His message was already there. Simple, steady. "Good morning. How is Ava today?" Lily felt a small warmth settle in her chest as she read it. The way he said her baby's name, the way it felt natural, like it belonged in the conversation now. She typed back without overthinking, She slept almost 5 hours last night. That is a miracle for us, she added a small smile without realizing it. Then sent the message. Across the city, Ethan stood by his window again, the morning light stretching across the glass, his coffee untouched for a moment as he read her reply. 5 hours. He repeated it quietly in his mind. Something so small, so ordinary. Yet the way she said it made it feel like a victory. And he found himself understanding that without needing explanation. His fingers moved across the screen, slower now. More intentional. That is a big win. You must be exhausted. He paused, then added, Are you getting any rest at all? He sent it, not as a formality, not as polite conversation, but because he actually wanted to know. Lily read the message while gently rocking Ava, her eyes lingering on the words longer than necessary, not because they were complicated, but because they carried something she was not used to receiving, concern without expectation. She typed back, a little, when she lets me. Then after a pause, it is enough for now. She almost deleted that last part, worried it sounded too honest, but left it, because something about this conversation felt different, safer. The messages continued, not fast, not overwhelming, but steady, like a rhythm forming between them. Questions about small things, answers that slowly revealed more than either of them had planned. Lily mentioned the diner where she worked part-time, the early shifts, the way tips barely covered rent some weeks, and Ethan listened, really listened, asking questions that showed he was paying attention, not just responding. He did not offer solutions, did not step in with easy fixes. He stayed in the conversation, and that, somehow, mattered more. Hours passed without either of them noticing how natural it had become, this exchange between two lives that should never have crossed. And yet now, as Lily sat by the window with Ava resting peacefully in her arms and her phone warm in her hand, she realized something quietly but clearly. This was no longer just about a message sent by mistake. It had become something else, something real, something growing in the space between words. By the end of the week, something unspoken had settled into both of their lives. Not dramatic, not overwhelming, but consistent, like a quiet routine neither of them had planned, yet neither of them questioned anymore. Lily no longer hesitated when her phone lit up, and Ethan no longer told himself he would stop after the next message. Their conversations had grown beyond simple check-ins, stretching into small windows of honesty that opened without warning. That afternoon, Lily sat on the edge of her bed, Ava sleeping beside her, her tiny hand resting against the blanket, while Lily balanced her phone in one hand, rereading a message Ethan had sent just minutes earlier. What do you usually do on your days off? She smiled faintly at the question, because days off felt like a luxury she barely recognized anymore. She typed slowly, I do not really have days off, but when I do, I just stay home with Ava. Maybe take her for a walk if the weather is nice. She paused, then added, Nothing exciting. Before sending it, across the city, Ethan read her reply while seated at a long conference table, voices around him discussing numbers, projections, decisions that carried weight in a very different world. But for a moment, all of that faded slightly as he focused on her words. Nothing exciting, he repeated quietly to himself, yet somehow, the image of her walking with her baby felt more real than anything in the room around him. He typed under the table, his movements subtle, almost hidden. That sounds better than most things I do. He sent it without looking up, then added a second message a moment later. Do you ever go to the park on 8th Street? Lily's brows pulled together slightly as she read that. Surprised by the specificity, she thought about it for a second, then replied. Sometimes, it is close to my apartment. She hesitated, her thumb hovering before adding, Why? The question lingered there, simple but heavier than it appeared, because for the first time, the distance between them felt like it might shrink in a way she could not control. Ethan read her response and leaned back slightly in his chair, the conversation around him continuing, unaware of the shift happening in his own. He stared at the screen for a moment longer than usual, aware that this was different, that this was a step beyond messages, beyond the safety of distance. His fingers moved slowly as he typed, then stopped, then erased, then tried again. I pass by there sometimes, he wrote, keeping it vague, controlled, then added, Maybe one day I will see you there. He sent it before overthinking it further. The message reached Lily, and her breath caught slightly, not out of fear, But because something about that line felt real in a way the others had not, the idea of crossing paths, of turning a message into a moment, she looked down at Ava, still sleeping peacefully, then back at her phone, her heart beating just a little faster as she typed. Maybe. She did not add anything else, did not explain or question, just that one word. And when she sent it, she felt it settle between them, not a promise, not a plan, but a possibility, quiet and fragile, waiting just beneath the surface of everything they had built so far. And for the first time, both of them began to realize that this connection, born from a mistake, was slowly moving towards something neither of them could fully predict, yet neither of them were ready to stop. The next afternoon arrived with a quiet kind of anticipation Lily did not admit to herself. The sky was clear, the kind of soft blue that made the city feel a little less heavy. And after watching Ava nap peacefully for nearly an hour, she made a decision that felt small, but carried more weight than she expected. She dressed slowly, choosing her cleanest sweater, adjusting it twice in the mirror even though nothing about it changed. Her eyes lingering on her reflection just a second longer than usual, not searching for perfection, just reassurance. Ava stirred gently as Lily lifted her into the carrier, securing the straps carefully, whispering soft words without realizing she was doing it. Then she reached for her phone, her thumb hovering over the screen before finally opening their message thread. She typed, paused, then erased it, then tried again. I think I might go to the park today. She stared at the message, her heart beating slightly faster, then pressed send before she could rethink it. Across the city, Ethan was stepping out of a black car when his phone vibrated in his hand. He glanced down as he adjusted his jacket, reading her message in one smooth motion. And for the first time in a long while, his next decision had nothing to do with schedule or obligation. He looked toward the building in front of him, then back at his phone, his assistant speaking beside him about the next meeting, but her voice faded slightly as he typed. What time? He sent it, his tone calm, but something in his chest had shifted, something less controlled. Back in the apartment, Lily read his reply almost instantly, her breath catching just slightly, because now it was real, not just a possibility, not just a maybe. Her fingers tightened around the phone for a second before she typed. Around 3, she added. If Ava stays calm. Then sent it, her pulse steady but present, the kind that made every small movement feel more intentional. Time moved differently after that, slower and faster at the same time. Lily found herself glancing at the clock more often than usual, adjusting Ava's blanket twice, checking her bag 3 times to make sure she had everything, bottles, wipes, the formula she had bought just days ago, each item grounding her in reality, because the rest of it felt uncertain in a way she could not fully name. At exactly 2:45, she stepped out of the apartment, the hallway quieter than usual, the air outside cool but gentle. She walked toward the park with steady steps, not rushing, not hesitating, just moving forward, each block bringing a mix of calm and something else she did not try to define. When she reached the entrance, she paused for just a second, her eyes scanning the familiar paths, the benches, the trees swaying lightly in the afternoon breeze. Nothing looked different, nothing had changed, and yet everything felt like it had. She adjusted the strap on Ava's carrier and stepped inside, unaware that across the street, just out of sight, a black car had already stopped, and inside it, Ethan Cole sat quietly, watching the park through the tinted window, his phone resting in his hand, his reflection faint against the glass, and for the first time in years, he hesitated. Not because he did not know what to do, but because this moment, simple and ordinary, carried more meaning than any decision he had made all week. For a long moment, Ethan did not move, the engine of the car idling softly beneath him, the faint vibration barely noticeable compared to the weight of the decision sitting quietly in his chest. Through the tinted glass, he could see her now, not clearly at first, just a figure stepping into the park, adjusting the strap of a baby carrier, her movements careful, grounded, real in a way that nothing in his world usually was. He exhaled slowly, his fingers tightening slightly around his phone as he watched her take a few more steps forward, unaware of him, unaware of the distance that still separated them even now. He had imagined this moment differently, or perhaps he had not imagined it at all, because this was not how things usually unfolded for him. There was no preparation, no control, no certainty, just a quiet intersection of two lives that should have never crossed. Inside the park, Lily walked along the familiar path, her eyes scanning casually, though her heart was anything but calm. She told herself she was just here for the fresh air, for Ava, for a simple afternoon. But the awareness lingered, subtle but present. She noticed every person a little more than usual, every movement, every face, wondering without wanting to admit it if one of them might be him. She reached a bench near a small tree and sat down slowly, adjusting Ava's position, her fingers brushing gently over her baby's soft hair, grounding herself in something certain, something she understood. Her phone remained in her pocket, untouched, as if taking it out would make everything too real too quickly. Across the street, Ethan finally opened the car door, the sound muted as he stepped out, the city noise rushing in around him, distant conversations, passing cars, the ordinary rhythm of the world continuing as if this moment meant nothing at all. He closed the door behind him and stood still for just a second, his gaze lifting toward the park entrance. Then he started walking, each step measured, not rushed, not hesitant, just deliberate. Inside the park, Lily felt a shift before she saw anything, a subtle change in the air, the kind that comes when someone's presence enters your space without a sound. She lifted her eyes slowly, almost instinctively, and there he was, not the stranger from a message, not just a name on a screen, but a real person walking toward her, tall, composed, dressed simply, but with a presence that felt different. Her breath caught for a second, not because of recognition, but because something about him felt familiar in a way she could not explain. Ethan slowed his steps as he got closer, his eyes meeting hers for the first time, and in that moment, something shifted again, quieter this time, but deeper. He stopped a few feet away, not too close, giving her space, giving the moment room to exist without pressure. Lily held his gaze, her fingers instinctively resting protectively against Ava, her heart steady but aware. He spoke first, his voice calm, grounded. Lily, her name sounded different out loud, real in a way it had not been through text. She nodded slowly, her voice softer than she expected. Ethan? And just like that, the distance between messages and reality disappeared, replaced by something neither of them could step back from now. Because this was no longer a conversation on a screen, this was a moment they were standing inside together. For a few seconds, neither of them spoke again, not because there was nothing to say, but because everything they had said over the past days suddenly felt different now that it existed between them in real space. Lily shifted slightly on the bench, adjusting Ava instinctively, her fingers brushing gently over the small blanket as she tried to steady the quiet rush of thoughts in her mind. Ethan remained where he was, not sitting yet, not stepping closer, giving her the space to decide what this moment would become. His eyes softened as they moved briefly to the baby in her arms, then back to her, grounding the moment in something simple, something human. She is Ava, Lily said quietly, her voice carrying a hint of something protective but also something open. Ethan nodded, his expression easing into something warmer than before. She looks peaceful, he replied, and there was no exaggeration in his tone, no attempt to impress, just an observation that felt real. Lily studied him for a second longer, her gaze more focused now, taking in the details she had not noticed before, the way he stood, the calm in his posture, the quiet confidence that did not need to be spoken, and something in her chest tightened slightly, not from fear, but from recognition that this man, this person standing in front of her, did not entirely match the version she had built in her mind. Not worse, not better, just different. I did not expect you to come, she admitted softly, her honesty slipping through before she could filter it. Ethan let out a small breath, almost a quiet laugh. I was not sure I would, he said, his voice steady but carrying a truth she could feel. But I am glad I did. The words settled between them, simple, but heavier than they appeared. Lily looked down at Ava for a moment, as if drawing strength from the small life resting against her, then back up at him, her eyes clearer now. Thank you for everything, she said. And this time it was not just about the money. It was about the messages, the presence, the way he had shown up without asking for anything in return. Ethan nodded slightly, but something in his expression shifted, more serious now, more intentional. "You do not owe me anything, Lily," he said. The same sentiment he had sent before, but now spoken out loud. Carrying more weight, more certainty, she held his gaze, her brows pulling together just slightly. "I know," she replied, her voice calm. "But that does not mean it did not matter." And for a moment, that was all there was. Two people standing in the quiet space of a park, surrounded by ordinary life moving around them, yet completely still in their own. Ethan finally took a step closer, just enough to sit at the edge of the bench, not too close, leaving a respectful distance between them, but enough to signal that he was staying, that he was not just passing through. His eyes drifted once more to Ava, then back to Lily, and something unspoken settled there again, deeper now, more grounded, because this was no longer about a message sent by mistake. It was about what they chose to do with what came after, and neither of them, in that quiet moment, seemed ready to walk away from it. The afternoon light softened as the minutes passed, stretching longer shadows across the park, but neither of them seemed to notice time in the same way anymore. Lily sat with Ava resting peacefully against her, her body more relaxed now than it had been in days, while Ethan remained beside her, quiet but present, the space between them no longer uncertain, just open. They spoke in low voices at first, simple things, where she worked, how old Ava was exactly, what her days looked like, and for once, Lily did not feel the need to hide the truth behind lighter words. She spoke honestly about the long shifts, the tight budget, the nights that felt longer than they should, and Ethan listened without interrupting, without offering quick solutions, his attention steady in a way that made her feel heard rather than fixed. After a while, Ava stirred slightly, her small face scrunching before relaxing again, and without thinking, Ethan leaned just a little closer, not crossing any boundaries, just enough to see her better, his expression softening in a way he did not try to control. "She trusts you completely," he said quietly, almost more to himself than to her. Lily looked down at her baby, her fingers gently brushing over Ava's tiny hand. "She is all I have," she replied, her voice calm but carrying a depth that did not need explanation. Ethan nodded slowly, something in his chest tightening, not painfully, but with a kind of clarity he was not used to. He had spent years building things, companies, systems, decisions that shaped thousands of lives. But sitting here, beside a woman who measured her world in ounces of formula and hours of sleep, he realized how different value could look depending on where you stood. He reached into his pocket almost absent-mindedly, pulling out his phone, his thumb hovering over the screen before he turned it slightly toward her, not showing numbers, not showing status, just the message thread. The very first line still there, untouched. "Can you send me $30 for baby formula?" He looked at it for a moment, then at her. "This message, it found the wrong number," he said quietly, then paused, his voice softer now. "Or maybe the right one." Lily followed his gaze to the screen, her breath catching just slightly as she saw it again. The moment everything had changed, she let out a small, almost disbelieving exhale. "I almost did not send it," she admitted, her voice barely above a whisper. Ethan's lips curved into a faint smile, not wide, not dramatic, just real. "I almost did not answer," he replied, and for a moment, that truth settled between them, not heavy, but meaningful, the kind that lingered, the kind that reshaped how you saw everything that came after. Lily looked up at him then, really looked this time, not just at the man who had helped her, but at the person who had chosen to stay. And something in her expression softened in a way that no words could fully explain. The fear was still there, the uncertainty, the life she still had to figure out. But now, there was something else beside it, something steady, something shared. Ava shifted again, letting out a soft, content sound, and Lily adjusted her gently, her movements natural, unguarded. Ethan watched for a second longer, then leaned back slightly, his presence still close, still grounded. The city moved around them, people passing, conversations blending into the background, but for them, the moment remained still, not frozen, just held. And as the light dipped a little lower and the day quietly moved forward, neither of them said it out loud, but both of them felt it, that something which had started as a mistake had become something neither of them wanted to lose, and for the first time, the future did not feel like something to survive. It felt like something they might actually choose together.